What is up? We're live. What's going on, everybody? How is everybody doing? W's in the chat. Someone said in Sneeko and Riyadh and Thanos. What's going on, everybody? How's everybody doing tonight? We're live. We're going to go for the news in a moment here. Bit of a lengthy day for me, but I've been able to make it back and kind of dot all my I's, cross my T's, get ready for the show. I wasn't sure if I would make it tonight. I had a busy day, but I was able to kind of get back in, square everything away, get back on track. So, yeah, yesterday I wasn't feeling so well. I was actually planning on going live yesterday because there were some rather interesting developments in regards to the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, Operation Freedom was halted by President Trump, so we'll talk all about that. But really, I just decided I'll go tomorrow. I wasn't feeling the best, so I didn't think that I would do the best show. Was a little bit sick, not feeling well, nauseous. I don't know, all of those weird feelings. But tonight should be good. A lot of stuff has happened. You've got Operation Freedom. It was halted. Pete Hegseth spoke to the press. Marco Rubio spoke to the press. Israel has bombed Lebanon again, specifically a suburb south of Beirut, Al-Ghabaiti, I believe it is called, targeting a senior Hezbollah commander. And so we'll get into that if we have time. I'll save that kind of for the end. There's a bunch of stuff going on right now. Tucker Carlson interviewed Thomas Massie, so I'm sure there's going to be some good clips that we can react to coming out of that. And then, of course, the Fujairah drone strike. The UAE had an oil facility that was struck by an Iranian drone on, I believe, Monday. And so there have been subsequent strikes after that on the UAE. However, Iran has denied any real inclusion in that. So we'll get into all of it. I think the biggest thing, though, is that Trump pulled out of this Operation Freedom that he was bragging about from Sunday that was supposed to take place on Monday morning. So I got a couple articles here pulled up, but not to do the whole thing. I know we've been doing this a lot. The amount of times that I've said, what did I tell you guys, shows you should probably start listening to the show a little bit more often. If you're not a casual viewer or somebody who's always here, maybe get in line, get accustomed to being here, because I've been right on almost every single prediction in regards to what's going to happen in the Middle East. Get this. This is like as of 30 minutes ago from NBC News and Ryan Grimm. It says here, Trump's Project Freedom collapsed after Saudi Arabia and Kuwait suspended U.S. military access to their bases, airspace, and overflight rights. The kingdom blocked the U.S. from flying aircraft out of Prince Sultan Air Base or through Saudi airspace, completely grounding the operation and removing the air defense umbrella protecting ships in transit. Now, what did I tell you, people? What did I tell you? I predicted, my brother and I as well, we clearly predicted and stated from February that if the United States is to get into a long-winded conflict with Iran, regardless of whatever happens, one of the key takeaways and one of the things that will forfeit the ability to actually exercise in favor of our power after the conflict is that we have control of bases or several military bases scattered throughout the GCC or these Gulf nations. Of course, the most important ones being in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the largest one being in Qatar. That one was hit, at least a power plant was hit, and so it was not operational for a duration of time. And now we've gotten to the point where we try to launch a further operation, that being Operation Freedom, and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia came out today, just about 20 or 30 minutes ago. This is a verified report that they did not want the United States to operate from their bases or use their airspace to protect the ships in the strait. These ships obviously being responsible for fulfilling the mission of Donald Trump's Operation Freedom, Pete Hegseth coining it as the Red, White, and Blue Dome. This was a plan announced on Sunday, and we'll go through Trump's Truth Social post. We got a lot to cover, so don't worry. This was announced on Sunday as a plan to escort these vessel ships or these cargo vessels, these oil vessels out of the Strait of Hormuz. Approximately 1,500 to 2,000 ships are currently stuck in the Strait of Hormuz, unable to pass through due to the blockade from Iran, as well as the blockade from the United States on the blockade, which has proved to be an economic disaster and has put the conflict into more economic turmoil, or actually caused more economic turmoil. And so Donald Trump tried to address this. So go back Sunday, Donald Trump, he says, we're going to launch this operation because of the desperation of all these Middle Eastern countries and all these European countries asking us to get involved. He said this on Truth Social. Don't forget, prior, Donald Trump, and I'm getting straight into the show here. I'm not even doing any announcements. Maybe let me read a chat, but don't forget, prior, Donald Trump had said, oh, well, NATO is a paper tiger. These countries need the strait more than us. We don't need to open up the strait. They need to worry about the strait. We're not going to help them. If they ask us for help, then maybe we'll get involved. Here's the thing. They're not asking for help. They're asking for both sides to reach a peace deal. That's what the Chancellor of Germany says. He's condemned both sides. That's why the United States, really, Donald Trump pulled out 5,000 plus troops because he was upset with him. And every other European country as well has voiced condemnation, Italy and others, and NATO as a whole. And so really, it's become a situation where we tried to act like the strait being blocked was not affecting us. That proved to really be invalid after maybe a week or so of the conflict ongoing and then the economic pressure fluttering over to the United States. Why? Because gas is at an average of $4.50 right now. And if you don't know, when energy prices increase, so do the price of every single good after, right? Everything else kind of ensues. So you have energy going up, then you have groceries going up, and then everything else that people need. Regular everyday activities, regular everyday items can go up. Even car parts. I was looking at car parts earlier, brakes and things like that. Prices have gone up. And of course, you got tariffs to couple in with that. It doesn't really help the matter. But overall, we've kind of bragged, the Trump administration has bragged and said, we don't need the Strait of Hormuz. All right, fine. And to make a fair point, we definitely don't need it nearly as much as these countries. Remember, 20% of the world's global oil kind of runs through that 21-mile passageway, being the Strait of Hormuz, that is responsible for direct transport to Asia, Indochina, and then Europe. They actually depend on that oil physically. That's the oil that they use for their countries to power their countries, for energy, for gas, everything else in between. They've had a shortage of that. And so now they're kind of entering the beginning, or really have been in the beginning stage of an energy crisis. And now due to that, there has been an economic disaster in terms of the global oil market. We've felt it here in the United States. I'm not sure where oil is right now. I haven't checked, but it's always hovering around 100, 109. It's even crept up to 120 at some points. And experts and analysts have predicted as if this conflict continues on, it will easily cross the boundary of 200, which will be catastrophic for oil prices. And if you think things are expensive now, it'll get worse. Donald Trump and the MAGA administration understands this is political unaliving for them. Midterms are right around the corner. They are going to lose the House. They are going to lose a lot of the Senate likely. So for them, they have to look politically stable, strong, and actually have a control of the situation by the time November rolls over. And so this is damage control. What does Donald Trump try to do to kind of address the answer of, or the question of, well, gas is so high, this war has made everything unaffordable? The first thing he does, and this is the thing that they've all echoed, and you're going to see Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump himself say this. I'm going to play these clips in a moment. But the first thing they do is go, well, we don't actually need that gas. The United States can afford to pay a little bit of a higher gas price because of the fact that Iran won't have a nuclear weapon. They're saying, don't complain, stop complaining, be grateful because now Iran won't have a nuke. Donald Trump actually told kids this inside of the White House. There were some clips that surfaced. I'll play those as well. And now, in desperation to open up that strait that we so viciously bragged we don't need open, we launched Operation Freedom. CENTCOM had announced this on Sunday night, or really Sunday afternoon at around 4 p.m. Eastern time. And the plan essentially was to give a naval escort with several aircraft carriers, several different guided cruise missile ships, or all these different military assets to protect these oil vessels and passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Excuse me. And it was a monumental failure. It didn't even last a day. The IRGC had struck a cargo ship belonging to a French firm, allegedly, and that was a ship that was being led by the U.S. Navy escort, or this naval escort. And they tried to walk it back, at least CENTCOM did, in saying that this is not going to be this military offensive campaign. But I mean, if Iran is weaponizing the Strait of Hormuz, and we're directing our Navy inside of that same strait that we are blockading, by the way, in order to pull ships out so they can export oil, which is what they've been weaponizing so that they don't have to get attacked militarily, well, then it kind of makes it an offensive measure in a way because we're getting involved in their main weapon. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't, right? The Strait of Hormuz needs to be open. I'm not this pro-IRGC guy. I think it's annoying that it's closed. I don't like the fact that prices have skyrocketed. I don't like the fact that the world as a whole and its economies have kind of suffered as a result. But you also have to be reasonable. You also have to be a little bit more logical and sensible. Iran does not really have much wiggle room here. They don't have the most powerful military. They're a middle power at best. A lot of their missiles are still existent, but they're not able to be utilized if the United States is not launching kinetic strikes on Iran. Now, they hit the oil facility in Fujairah, the oil pipeline in Fujairah on the coastline of the UAE, right next to Oman, just recently on Monday. But in regards of kinetic or military strikes, Iran has not really been able to exercise that ability because the United States has not really provoked them in doing so ever since the ceasefire that took place on April 6th or April 7th, followed by J.D. Vance and his attempted peace talks that failed. So it's kind of been this economic war, back and forth, blockades, back and forth choking of one another's economy. We try to block their ports. Ships allegedly got through. We struck a ship the other day, killed some passengers, whatever have you. But things have really been transforming in Iran's favor. And I'll tell you how, and I'll get into everything. But I think I had a chat, so I just want to read it and go through some announcements really quickly before I get into everything. I'm like flying through the news. So let's see. I think I had one chat, if I'm not mistaken. So let me read that before I actually start. Free Palestine says Rokana 2028. I doubt that. Not sure if I'd vote.
Two U.S.
But yeah, lots of things. We'll kind of react to the videos. I'll get into them. I don't want to talk too much tonight. But there's a good amount to cover. Then again, it shouldn't be too long of a stream, I don't think. Right? But we'll kind of get into the good stuff.
Legacy tarnish.
But
from
so,
Jada.
and then my brother's live with academics right now, and they're shitting on Andrew Schultz, which is funny. And I'm sure my brother's cooking, so I'm going to watch that later. But anyways, so this is really the news if you have not been paying attention. And I got a bunch of articles pulled up here. But where were we? What was I talking about? All right, so Project Freedom stopped as of May 5th, and it was launched on May 4th. So it only lasted about a day. And of course, this failed because the IRGC has the ability of hurling drones over the strait, missiles, whatever it is, and threatening these oil vessels, which will be a lot more reluctant to actually pass through, even with a U.S. guarantee of military security. And this is what Donald Trump tried in the beginning of the conflict. He said, we'll guarantee these ships, and no insurance company is actually going to guarantee any sort of protection or damage coverage for these ships if the IRGC, this country that's being attacked, or the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the military faction of Iran, is threatening to attack these ships as a result of U.S. invasion, which is what we did. We invaded them on February 28th, and we struck Tehran. We killed their supreme leader. So obviously this is a charged up regime. So we tried the Operation Freedom. It doesn't work. But this is the biggest thing that I want to highlight to all of you. Pay very close attention here. Since the start of this war, one country has been looking significantly stronger and one country has been looking significantly weaker. Have you been noticing that? And this is actually, to my dismay, I don't like to admit this, but this is unfortunately the truth for anybody who is not MAGA captured, anybody who is not an idiot, a modern day neoconservative. Really, the reality has become Iran has displayed that it's strong. They display that they have the escalation dominance. They have the ability of deterrence because they just stopped Trump in his tracks from his next operation and opening up the strait. Didn't even last 48 hours. And so really the United States has failed after failed. It's been failure after failure after failure, and kind of these empty, bold claims. And Donald Trump has not helped the matter. He's launched all these threats on Truth Social saying, we're going to destroy their military and we're going to completely cut their legs out from under them. We're going to change the regime. The people are going to take the country back. And none of that has happened, really. We have not stopped their missiles program. We have not stopped their drones program. Their drones program just hit a oil facility in the UAE, that being in Fujairah. I think 3 Indian workers were injured as a result, and then subsequent strikes in the following days. However, Iran has not claimed responsibility for those. They said that that wasn't them. I don't know how true that is there, because they received global condemnation, those strikes in the oil ports. So maybe they thought, hey, let's pull back on this, or at least claiming ownership for the attacks. But you can see that Iran has become very bold, and their confidence has bolstered because they've just now successfully deterred the most powerful country in the world militarily for the last 68 days. I believe this conflict has now reached. So we're going into our 3rd month now. It is May. It's currently May 6th. We're moving on to May 7th. And still, no peace talks have actually gone anywhere. No peace deal. And the ceasefire has extended. Now, yesterday and the day before seemed like the kind of cusp of the ceasefire because of the fact that the naval blockade was going to be opened up by this Operation Freedom Plan that Donald Trump had launched on Truth Social on Sunday, paired along with Central Command. And so they said, we're going to open up the strait, we're going to guide these ships through. Didn't work. But what Robert Pape is saying, and what all the other experts, as well as myself, I'm not an expert, but what I was predicting as well, is the United States was banking on an attack on a U.S. Navy vessel in order to actually attack Iran full-fledged like we did in the beginning of the conflict in the first 40 days. That seemed to at least be the plan of this trap of provoking Iran into actually striking the United States, so we had a valid grounds or basis for hitting them back. As you know, Donald Trump and his Operation Epic Fury has received global condemnation from his NATO partners and everybody else because of the fact that the war was highly unnecessary and does not prove to be beneficial for the United States whatsoever. Rather, it proves to be beneficial for Israel. And this is the whole thing. Benjamin Netanyahu obviously sold the idea that this would be a short-scaled conflict. This would not be long-winded. This would not be an Iraq Part 2. This would be a shorter Gulf War. We would take out the key components in Iran, their military leadership, and then from there, we'd walk away and we'd have a regime we don't have to worry about in the Middle East, that being the IRGC. This home of terror, this harbor of terror, funder of the proxy networks, and most importantly, and what this administration has been weaponizing, this nuclear threat, right? They're going to make a nuke. They already have a nuke. They're a week away from a dirty bomb. Stephen Witkoff, Mark Levin, all these guys echoing the same sentiment, really. It's been the same Hasbara rhetoric for years, actually. Since the 90s, we've been saying that Iran is very close to making a full-scale mass destructive weapon, right? Weapons of mass destruction. It's the same thing. However, we've gone to Iran, and to Donald Trump's surprise, I would assume, what was supposed to be a few weeks has now lasted 68 days. I'm telling you all of this to say that Iran has proved they are far more powerful than they actually are. That doesn't matter as much, though. What they actually did prove that's way more detrimental for us back at home is we're not as strong as we once seemed. It was the truth, and it was a reality that at a point in time, the United States could exercise brinksmanship, put our naval vessels, our amphibious assault vessels on the coastline of any nation, and say, you need to comply with our demands. If you don't, things will get worse. And that was typically more than enough to actually get any country to concede to our maximalist demands or our desires, whatever we needed them to do. That was kind of like the MO. Now that hasn't worked. Obviously, we tried that in Iran, and Iran, their foreign minister, all of their spokespeople always echo the same or harbor really the same sentiment. We will not be bullied by the United States. And so now they're calling Axios Foxios. They're saying Axios is fake news. I mean, they've gotten brave. And it's gotten to the point now where they're telling you what Donald Trump is going to try to do, and then they're telling you how they're going to respond, and they're telling you how it's going to fail, and then Donald Trump is going to go back to the drawing board and try something else. That's what's been happening for the last month and a half now, since we've had this extended ceasefire, which I hope continues to extend. But to no avail, it has not worked. And so continuously, as we try and exercise more steps, as we try and exercise new possibilities of peace, or maybe new military campaigns, or these shadowy, vague operations like Operation Freedom, where we're actually provoking them to attack us, whatever we try, it doesn't work. They call it out, they stop it, they shut it down, and then we have to go back to square one. And Donald Trump has to let out this lie. He hurls these lies on Truth Social or to the press and says, well, don't worry, it all worked out, but we actually have good negotiations ongoing. And so now Donald Trump, and this is out of the New York Times, but everybody's really saying this, Donald Trump is saying, we're in a good stage of talks with Iran right now. We're having good talks. But then Iranian leadership, Ismail Baghiya, I believe his name is, the spokesperson for Foreign Minister of Affairs, as well as Abbas Araghchi, are both saying, we're not talking to anybody, right? And this has been the case since the beginning. They're saying, there's really no negotiations that are currently being had. The United States seized their operation, and now we don't know what's next. And that's the reality, right? So it's just this back and forth. But remember, Donald Trump said in the beginning, and he said several times in the last few weeks, we don't know who to talk to. They don't have leadership that's existing. But then at the same time, he's saying, we're having good talks with Iran right now. And so it looks like they're going to come to the table. They're very desperate for a deal. And it's a constant contradiction. It's a fest of contradictions. And it's gotten to the point now where it's just really an insult to the American people. And this has become so detrimental, not only because of the fact that gas is high and the economy is suffering and Wall Street is feeling it and investors don't like it, and the UAE and these Gulf countries will not actually be able to capitalize on tourism and real estate like they once were kind of leaning on, because that's the direction that they're going to have to shift towards instead of oil in the next 20 or 30 years as the world moves towards electric rather than energy or oil. But the real issue with all of this ongoing, or the real biggest problem with this conflict, is that the United States has kind of lost that iconic number one on the scale figure, or we've lost that we are the best, most strongest power in the world and nobody can touch us. And remember how bad the conflict looked in Iraq. Iraq was a 10, 20-year struggle. It was this problem that we could not put a cap on. It was a war that was started for a false pretext, which was weapons of mass destruction, something that never existed. The UN admitted this. George Bush actually admitted this in an interview with CNN in 2017. But this is even worse. We're not saying Iran has weapons of mass destruction. We're saying they have nukes. They don't have nukes. They don't even have nukes. They never had nukes. They had a fatwa, which is a religious ruling in 2003, if my memory serves me correctly, that nukes are haram because of the destruction that they may cause upon an innocent civilian population, as well as the fact that they've onwardly and repeatedly expressed they don't actually want a nuke. They're just hedging at 60% enriched uranium, which is not weapons grade, but it's close to it, in order to deter factions like the Israeli Defense Force and the United States from overthrowing their regime or threatening their right to self-determination, their sovereignty, all of those other things. So this has not worked. If Iraq looked bad for the last 20 years, imagine how bad this is going to look. And so it really doesn't matter what Donald Trump tries to do anymore. The fact that he started this war and now it's potentially ending, according to Marco Rubio, is even worse because we got nothing done. At least in Iraq, we actually overthrew the regime. We got rid of Saddam Hussein, which, for better or worse, you can argue later. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying we actually achieved some goals in Iraq, and it still proved to be fruitless and detrimental for the Middle East and the U.S. as a whole. Of course, it served the largest benefit to Israel. Israel was the greatest beneficiary of that conflict. And they wanted that conflict to happen. That's what Netanyahu was dreaming of since he took power in the 90s, the clean break deal, everything else in between. That is something that he created. He was the architect of the United States kind of getting involved in the Middle East, starting with Iraq in 2003. Not starting, but really the kinetic aspect and the full-scale forever war idea started in the early 2000s, late 90s. But now we've done the same thing in Iran, and it's like, when are people going to learn? You know, we always lie and say, this country has a terrorist regime, this country has these great big weapons, we start a war, we kill a bunch of people, we raise gas prices, we destroy our ability of deterrence or looking like a stable nation, and in turn, we have not even changed the regime in Iran. We have not even cut off their missile supply. We have not even stopped their enrichment of uranium. They still have it. We haven't seized it. We've done nothing. We've literally done nothing. Militarily, they're defeated is what a lot of people will say. Yeah, but to what benefit is that? I mean, what does that even mean? And this is the problem, too. This is how you know this conflict isn't going well for us. Look at the last 3 weeks. Have you tried reading the news aside from watching my streams? You'd probably become very confused. Everybody's saying different things. This administration is running around like chickens with their fucking heads cut off. No one knows what the hell is happening. Every single article is saying something different. Everybody on X is saying something different. Donald Trump is contradicting Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is contradicting Pete Hegseth. And it's just become this disaster. And that's a sign we don't know what the hell we're doing. We have no idea what we're doing. We don't know why we're in the region, but we're there because Donald Trump said it would be quick. Now it's been 70 days. We're in our 3rd month, that being May. We're going to enter the 4th month. And to no avail, no success has actually been reached at all. So we need to set the sail on this war. We need to let it go. I am praying that Donald Trump comes to his senses, pulls out. I'm honestly myself getting sick and tired of talking about it, but it is important because this is relevant. And at any moment, this can break back into a full-scale kinetic conflict. Strikes, airstrikes, jets, everything like that. That can happen in the next few days. That's been realistic, and that could have happened from April 6th to now. And it's been a month since April 6th. It's actually May 6th now. So the ceasefire has lasted just a little bit over a month. And I'm hoping that it can stay that way. We reach some sort of peace deal. But the problem is, with Iran growing so much balls like they did in the midst of this conflict by defending themselves successfully, for them, it's like, why are we going to make a peace deal with the United States unless we get what we want? For them, they've successfully defended themselves. They've deterred the United States. They've captured the Strait of Hormuz. They made tons of money on it. And they've had every other country in the region, Europe and Asia and Indochina, at the mercy of Iran, at the mercy of the IRGC, at their feet, begging them to open up the strait, paying them, or charging these ships tolls. So look at how much power they've gained from this conflict. Why would they then come to the table with the United States and at the threat of a few drone strikes or at the threat of a few strikes from an F-35 jet from the United States concede and say, oh no, we want peace? That has proved to be ineffective. It's rendered ineffective. It's invalid. It's void. It's done nothing to actually change the regime or stop their military capability. So for them, they're going to make maximalist demands as well. And they're going to ask for reparations. They're going to ask for sanctions relief. They're going to ask for no military bases in the Middle East belonging to the United States within their peripheral. These are all things we cannot concede on. So then we have our asks. We have our demands, our requests in these quote-unquote good faith peace talks, and we say, well, you can't have any nuclear enrichment. Matter of fact, you can't have uranium at all. You got to relocate it. You got to bring it down to 3.67%, which is nowhere near weapons grade right away, only enough to power a power plant. And you've got to do no more missiles, or at least if you contain the missile program, it can only go as far as the eye can see. Who's actually going to agree to that? Not the country that's been strategically whooping our ass for the last 70 days. And that's why I'm very frightened at the idea that this can end soon, or really I'm not motivated by that reality because of the fact that both sides are now becoming very bold. And for Iran, this matters deeply because they can't just let this conflict end without guaranteeing they won't be attacked again. And today, or matter of fact, yesterday, it was reported all day this morning though, Iran is now striking Lebanon and Beirut again. And civilians have been killed as a result. And it's the same thing all over again. They're still trying to annex southern Lebanon. And so you have that issue going on. And southern Lebanon is home to the Iranian proxy Hezbollah, which is a part of the IRGC in a way. And so, or really a part of the Iranian regime, their total military faction that encompasses some of the region. And so that's another issue is you have Israel being able to agitate the matter in the middle and make a peace deal being brokered nearly impossible. They have the ability, or they really reserve the right to strike Lebanon at any time, to strike Iran at any time, and drag the United States right back into a full-scale war. And this is something Marco Rubio admitted in the beginning of the war. He said, we started this war because we knew that Israel and Iran were going to get into a full-scale conflict from Israel being the aggressor. A preemptive strike is what he said. And that went viral. That surfaced everywhere. And that was in the very beginning. I mean, I believe in March he said that. So as early on as a few weeks after the war had started. So with all these things existing at the same time, I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I'm not trying to be patronizing or somebody who's a Debbie Downer. But when you look at all of the facts, when you look at the fact that both sides are asking for these wild demands, and the fact that Donald Trump still tries to posture and look very strong and make it look like he has control of a situation he has no control over, well then to me, that's the first concerning signal that this may not actually cease anytime soon. And this could potentially be a forever war. Could we reach a peace deal? Yeah, but one side's going to have to concede. And it seems like Iran did that with their previous 14-point proposal that I went over in my last stream. It kind of seems like they did that. They offered a phase 1, a phase 2. The phase 2 had the nuclear issue involved within it. 15-year freeze and the 60% enrichment, and then it goes back down to 3%. I don't think that Donald Trump is going to allow that to happen. That's way worse than the deal that he was offered in Oman, and that's way worse than the Iranian nuclear deal that was brokered by Barack Obama in 2016, the JCPOA. So bunch of things here that just kind of lead me to believe this may not be the end. Don't listen to Donald Trump. What have you learned at this point? I mean, if you still listen to Donald Trump, you've learned nothing anymore because he's lied profusely for the last 70 days. So I really wouldn't listen to him. I would pay attention to what's happening on the ground. I would pay attention to the spokespeople from Iran because they've been more transparent. They've got no reason to lie. They're defending themselves. For us, we're the aggressor. So we always have to make things seem like they're working in our favor because we started the war. For them, doesn't matter whether things are working in their favor or not, they're defending themselves, right? And they do have that right of self-defense. So for them, they're going to be transparent about what's happening on the ground. They're going to be transparent about the negotiations. They're going to be transparent about their plans because they haven't attacked anybody, right? So they don't have this moral high ground to try and defend constantly or try and upkeep or uphold, which is we must continue this campaign because we're so close to our goals. That's what the U.S. has to do. They don't have to do that. They're just telling you, hey, we're sitting back. We're defending ourselves. We blocked the strait so we can have some sort of leverage in this war because the United States is so much stronger than us. And this is what's happened so far. And this is what we're asking for. And this is what we're looking for in order to stop the war entirely and open up the strait. So, you know, not the best thing. But I mean, can you believe it? You know, he was so confident about Operation Freedom. Didn't get him so far, did it? So let's take a look at some of these clips.
You know, like this
by Hegseth and everybody else. And by the way, the Washington Post had just announced, and I have to pay for this article, but I went over this extensively in previous live streams. I'll go over it maybe later on if we have time, or tomorrow, because I'll be live tomorrow. It says Iran has hit far more U.S. military assets than reported, satellite images show. What do we guys tell you? They've destroyed so much of our military infrastructure belonging to these several Gulf countries. In Bahrain, in Kuwait, in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, the Prince Sultan Air Base, which is what Saudi Arabia blocked the United States from utilizing in Operation Freedom, which is likely why it failed or stopped happening. Donald Trump said that they had to pause it. And some of this was done by their Air Force, which we allegedly destroyed. That's what these reports are saying. And if you missed that, you can go back to my live stream on Sunday. We went over that in detail. But let's take a look at Trump's Truth Social posts, because what's funner to do than that? So allow me to just set this up nicely here. Okay. So this was him on Sunday, and I went over this. But he pretty much says countries from all over the world are suffering, so we're going to get involved. Operation Freedom, we're going to open up the strait. Okay? That was that. And then, after that, this was him talking about what Iran was doing in response to that operation. So, this reads here, Iran has taken some shots at unrelated nations with respect to the ship movement, Project Freedom, including a South Korean cargo ship. Perhaps it's time for South Korea to come and join the mission. We've shot down 7 small boats, or as they like to call them, fast boats. It's all they have left. Other than the South Korean ship, there has been at this moment no damage going through the strait. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane will have a news conference tomorrow morning. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Trump. Okay? And then look on this. Look at the shift. This is yesterday at 6:52. So in the evening, he says, based on the request of Pakistan and other countries, the tremendous military success that we have had during the campaign against the country of Iran, and additionally, the fact that great progress has been made towards a complete and final agreement with the representatives of Iran, we have mutually agreed, while the blockade will remain in full force and effect, which is what's keeping the strait blocked, by the way, is our blockade on their ports. But anyways, Project Freedom, the movement of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, will be paused for a short period of time to see whether or not agreement can be finalized and signed, President Donald J. Trump. Come on, bro. Really? Talk about a paper tiger. He's calling NATO paper tigers. And pay attention to the hypocrisy here. Iran proposed 14 points that they were willing to talk about to the United States, and it was sent to Washington. Donald Trump said publicly, I'm reviewing it. I don't know if it will be acceptable. Obviously, the plan was comprised of way too many maximalist demands that Donald Trump could not concede to. That's why he launched Operation Freedom. So you're telling me after a day of being in this operation and realizing it's not going to work and it's probably going to skyrocket oil prices because danger in the strait is going to be higher than it previously was, now you're ending the operation. That's why you're ending the operation, because you realize you're actually going to exacerbate the existing issue already. But instead, he uses the false notion that we're ending the operation because we actually have something with a peace deal now. No, you don't. You just said 2 days ago that their terms are likely unacceptable, and then you announce this operation, which is, to me, an implication that there is no such possible road to success out of these peace talks or out of the 14-point stipulation. And so that's why you started this. Now you're ending it because there's some success and maybe an agreement can be finalized and signed in the next few days. So it's like, what are we doing here? You know, what are we doing? And this is what I say. I'm telling you guys always, they're lying to you in your face. They're fooling you, and they're banking on you to be dumb enough to actually believe the bullshit. What's going on in the chat? Somebody's getting cooked? Okay. I have no idea what you guys are arguing about. Hacks is getting cooked. Anyways, so yeah, that's that. And I mean, what bigger tell that we don't know what we're doing? And then he tweeted this today. This was earlier this morning at about 7:41 approximately. Or no, exactly 7:41. I was right. Assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary Epic Fury will be at an end. And the highly effective blockade will allow the Hormuz Strait to be open to all, including Iran. Like, I like how he's talking about the Hormuz Strait being open to Iran as if they're not the ones blocking it. Okay, Mr. President. I don't know what he's talking about there. If they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be sadly at a much higher level and intensity than it was before. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So this starts off by him saying, assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to. So whatever that means, really. We'll take a look at what Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth are saying. Marco Rubio is kind of flirting with the idea that this is over. Pete Hegseth was talking about it in some detail as well, but we'll look at just clips of what they were really talking about. We won't watch it in full. And then we have a couple other things that I want to get to. Maybe we'll cover Israel striking Iran, or sorry, Israel strike. Well, that'll probably happen too. But Israel striking the southern province in Beirut. Let's pull this up here. Okay.
And with that, it's time for your questions. So, Catherine, why don't we start with you first?
Hi, Catherine Herridge. I'm an independent journalist. Secretary Rubio, have you...
Let me see if I can turn captions on for you guys. There you go.
Seen any recent indications that Iran is willing to give up its nuclear weapons program that is credible, verifiable, and that would lead to an immediate de-escalation?
Well, look, this is a long-standing problem for them, right? I mean, they have wanted, they have always said they don't want a nuclear weapon. That's because they've always said that, they just don't mean it. And why do you say, well, how do you know they don't mean it? Well, we don't mean it because they're doing all the things, and historically have tried to do all the things that you do if you want a nuclear weapons program. For example, they innovate and try to innovate long-range delivery missiles that now, in some cases, are capable of reaching much of Europe.
They're mid-range, they're not long-range.
They build these large underground centrifuges for enrichment activity. There are countries in the world that are involved in the enrichment business, but these guys do it in mountains and in caves and in hiding. They've always had secret components of their nuclear program undisclosed.
Maybe it's because you've imposed sanctions on them for the last 40 plus years and threatened to bomb them all the time, and Israel's always poking fun at the matter. And then you guys actually did it, so you vindicated them in building these things inside of mountains. Maybe that's why. And in regards to the whole nuclear situation, they say they're not going to build a nuke, but they absolutely were planning on building a nuke. Again, the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is a religious military faction that is comprised of religious Shiite Muslim zealots that adhere to their religion pretty closely, which is why they're so hell-bent on this idea of martyrdom in the right to reserve their freedom. And their leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has said in several statements the building and production of a nuclear weapon is haram or forbidden because of the mass destruction that it can invoke on a civilian populist nation or a civilian population as a whole. That's been the whole thing. So we know they weren't going to actually build one. However, they were enriching to a high degree, well over 30%. They were enriching at 60%. But we had addressed that concern, and this is how you know they're bullshitting. We addressed the 60% issue by bringing them back down to 3% in 2015 and 2016 with the original Iranian nuclear deal. Donald Trump destroyed that in 2018. He came into office in 16, and about a year and a half later, him and Mike Pompeo, the director of CIA, had greenlit the IRGC as a terrorist organization. So they imposed sanctions on Iran. They tarnished the deal. They greenlit all their leaders as terrorists, and then they went on to systematically kill high-ranking leaders in the IRGC over the next few years. The pager attack in Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah being the leader of Hezbollah in 2024, as well as Qasem Soleimani prior to that in 2020. So they killed all these guys systematically in order to open the door and make it a little bit easier for an entry into Iran and seizing that quote-unquote uranium, overthrowing the regime, which is the goal of Israel as regime change. That's the whole goal. Iran could have made a nuke a long time ago, and any expert would tell you this. They were not making a nuke. They were never going to make a nuke. The only thing that would push them in direction of making a nuke is killing the guy who had the religious authority to say no nukes and then having his more extreme son succeed him as you are threatening their sovereignty. That's going to make them race to a nuke. If anything is going to make them get a nuke. That's the perfect recipe, what we've done in the last 70 days. And I've said this ad nauseum. If there's any time Iran is likely to build a nuke, it's now as I'm talking to you. Because they're in the midst of a ceasefire that is super fragile and can end in a moment. Israel is continuously bombing Lebanon, southern Lebanon. They're desecrating Jesus statues. They're making the matter so much worse. And then on top of that, they just bombed a province south of Beirut, or a suburb of Beirut. And so you look at all of these things, and you look at the fact that Donald Trump is trying to repair the matter, but it's not really working. I mean, use your brain here. It's pretty obvious that we very well may go back to war. Iran knows that better than I do, probably better than you do. Maybe they have intelligence advances because they get their intelligence from Russia, or they get some sort of strategic go-ahead from China. Those are countries that they're strategically allied with. And so maybe in waiting for Washington to attack again or Israel to attack again, they're increasing their enrichment of uranium. It's a possibility. So everything he's saying is not only backwards, but goes against the war. If your goal is no nukes, well, then you should have tried to exercise diplomacy before killing every single ranking military official for 60 days straight.
To the world. And we know for a fact that they retain highly enriched uranium at 60%, that they did so, and that has no civilian use, none, zero whatsoever. So they have an opportunity here to agree to something that will make it clear that they're not interested in a nuclear. One thing is to say we don't want a nuclear weapon. Another thing is to do the things that prove you don't want a nuclear weapon. By the way, if what Iran wants is...
But they've done that. I just said that. They've done that. They've done that, but they've done it with the United States also making an agreement that we will remove economic sanctions. Our sanctions have crippled their economy and brought them to a record high level of inflation, which, by the way, doesn't just disrupt the government, it disrupts the civilian population far more. And so when there's high inflation and the economy is not stable, those people revolt against the government and they fight back. That's a part of the elaborate plan by the United States. You impose sanctions, you make the country suffer, you turn the populace against the government, and you get them to overthrow the regime. Maybe you do a little CIA Mossad meddling in there to exacerbate the matter and make it faster. And then from there, you get your organic regime change. We've done this several times. This is kind of like the recipe of regime change that the United States has strategized and utilized for several years now. And the CIA has always been behind it, and they're experts at it. That's what we tried. That's why we imposed sanctions. Everything Donald Trump did from 2018 and destroying the deal, killing the leaders, IRGC being a terrorist organization, all of these things he did were an escalation ladder to eventually land us in a position where we can overthrow the regime like that. Didn't work. We tried it in January when we had CIA agents and Mossad agents walking alongside every single protester in Iran. Remember that? Mike Pompeo tweeted it. Former director of CIA, Trump's right-hand man likely at that time, said Mossad agents are walking alongside every single Iranian protester, meaning we are invoking and pushing our intelligence assets into your protests that have been caused by our economic pressure against you and our sanctions so we can change your regime. Didn't work. The IRGC saw it coming, shut it down. That's why we had to go to war. And You had the fact that we attacked them back in the summer, didn't do anything, summer of last year. Operation Midnight Hammer, Operation Rising Lion, the 12-day war. Really Israel was fighting them for 12 days. That didn't do anything. And then we had the end the matter because Israel was actually suffering as a result. They found out about the ballistic missiles program. And then what happened from there? We hit their nuclear facilities, Natanz, Fordo, Isfahan. And Donald Trump said that we obliterated their nuclear program. And then we went to war again. But I thought we obliterated the nuclear program. We went to war just a year later. Why? Because Benjamin Netanyahu was concerned about the ballistic missiles program. They knew it existed, but they saw the damage it did in the 12-day war and likely told the president, we cannot let them build this up any stronger than it already exists. We can't let them stockpile these missiles. We have to stop the regime now. Because if we don't stop them, and if we don't halt their military advancement, they will get to the point where they can genuinely threaten our sovereignty, even if you intervene. And so Donald Trump was convinced and sold to start this war to save them, as well as the proxy network, but really the missiles. So we're starting this war not for nukes, it's for Israel's security and to get rid of the ballistic missiles program, which is the biggest threat to their security, not the nuclear program, because they don't have a bomb. And unfortunately, I'd have to add yet at this point. Because chances are, if we don't continue war, or if we don't get some deal where they'll agree not to make a bomb, they very well may have one. So now we have to introduce the frightening word of yet, because I don't want them to have a nuclear bomb either. But everything we're doing is making that far more likely than it ever was.
This civilian nuclear program for power plants and stuff like that, there are a lot of countries in the world that have that, and they don't enrich. They import the enriched material. You know, they could have that if that's what they wanted, but they're not acting like that's what they wanted. They're acting like they want a military, nuclear program. That's unacceptable. So that's the process we're engaged in now. To create, that's the object of this diplomacy, is to come up with some level of understanding about what are the topics that they've agreed to negotiate on. We don't have to have the actual agreement written out, and one day this is highly complex and highly technical. But we have to have a diplomatic solution that is very clear about the topics that they are willing to negotiate on and the extent and the concessions they're willing to make at the front end in order to make those talks worthwhile. That's what Stephen Jarrett and the whole team is working on, and I hope to have good news on it. That's the outcome we would prefer. That's the outcome we would have preferred a year ago. That's the.
If it was, you would have never attacked them. That's not the outcome you prefer.
The outcome I think most of us would have preferred a long time ago. But that's not the option they've given us given their activity. All right, there's no.
And what this is, it's this entire administration, this is their cover-up because what they really want is a regime change, okay? They want to change the IRGC. They want to remove the current leaders. They want the country to run in a completely different way where there's a U.S. Israeli-backed leader in charge. That's what they want. But since they cannot publicly say that and expose themselves, they have to run with this lie that it's all about the nukes. If it was all about the nukes, then we would have taken care of that by extending the JCPOA or conceding to the deal made to us in Oman previously. If it was about the nukes, then we would have just called up Iran and said, hey, can you chill out with the 60%? We'll release sanctions. But you can't fund your proxies. Maybe we would have added some stipulation like that. This is for regime change. That's what they really want. The nuke is a false pretext because the proof in that is if we wanted to address the nuclear situation, we would not have attacked them. There would have been several other ways to handle that issue. Because now we're in a situation where there's no off-ramp.
Way I can figure out who to call on. I'm just going to press right in the middle, right there. You right there, yeah. In the back row.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll go to you next. I can't get everybody. You know that. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio.
Keep going right.
Welcome to the White House.
What's that?
Talking to me, sir?
Yeah, to you, yes, sir.
Thank you.
1 second, let me just move this tab over, guys. Okay.
I have two questions on two separate issues that come
Do they
under...
get two questions for these?
Two questions.
There's a lot of people in here.
That fall under your umbrella.
All right, well, you answer. You can ask me two questions. I'll give you one answer. Go
Thank you
ahead.
very much.
And I'll pick the one I like better.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The first has to do with the blockade. There are lawmakers from both parties who claim the blockade is an act of war. What do you say to that? And my second question
It is.
has to do...
Because economically, you're attempting to make that country suffer.
With the fuel embargo of Cuba, how long, Mr. Secretary, will that last?
Okay, two things. All right, good. I'll answer both your questions because I like the second one too. The first one on the blockade. And so why do we have a blockade? We have a blockade because they shut down the straits. So I don't know which members of Congress you're talking to, but here's what I would ask them. I would ask everybody here. It's very simple. These guys have shut down the Straits of Hormuz. This is what Iran is saying. We will shut down the straits. No one can go through. No country in the world can go through unless we allow you to go through, and you have to pay us. But our ships can go through, meaning the Iranian ships, as much as they want. That's crazy. Who would agree to that? So how are we going to have a situation where they get to close the straits to everybody, and the only people who are allowed to go through there 100% without paying anything are the Iranians? If you do that, they'll keep the straits closed forever. They're trying to make this some new normal. Okay, under no circumstances can we ever allow them to normal.
But you motivated that new normal by attacking them with no warning and killing their leader. Let me ask you this. If the United States was attacked out of nowhere and Donald Trump was killed, and we had a strait that we can control, a small passageway of water responsible for global export and import even, and we took control of it, would we be wrong in doing that to defend ourselves? I mean, really? Really? I don't want the strait to be blocked, especially by Iran, but what else are they going to do? Fight back against the U.S., hit the U.S. and on their soil? They don't even have the ability to do that. So, I mean, really no other option exists for them except that. And they're doing it now for an extended period of time, if not forever, because one, that's their waters. Iran and Oman have always controlled the strait. But now they're going to have to use it for economic leverage because you've imposed sanctions and you've probably caused billions of dollars in damage by striking them, which has done nothing to actually stop the regime. Monumental failure.
The fact that they get to blow up commercial ships and put mines in the water. So the response to that is we're going to blockade your ships. If everyone's ships are not getting out, your
Because that works, right?
ships are not getting out either. That's not an act of war. That's a defensive measure. It's a counter to what they have decided to do.
Not when they open up the strait. 3 Fridays ago, the foreign minister said the Strait of Hormuz is now open. We're going to allow ships to pass through. And then after that, Donald Trump imposed a naval blockade on their ports so they could not export oil and make money. So who is the aggressor? Donald Trump had to do something before they opened up the strait and effectively ended the conflict so that he could look like he still has the advantage or the head on. He could look like he still has control of the situation. So this has all stemmed from, and I've said this before, this stems from Donald Trump playing like he has control. He doesn't know what he's doing because they opened the strait and they closed it again because we blocked their ports, which is an act of war. So I'm sorry, you blocked the blockade so that they can suffer too? Why? They opened it. Because you guys don't want to look like losers. You guys don't want to look like idiots, but that's what you are. You're all idiots. You all have no idea what you're doing. If you had any semblance of a good idea, you would have exercised diplomacy with Iran without Israel coddling you in the White House and getting in your ear, making you exercise bad decisions like striking them out of nowhere and killing their leader. Because now we forfeited our rights to make any demands that are near maximal. That's just the facts. We had far more of a likelihood or far more of a greater ability in getting Israel to concede to our demands before striking them. But no, you let Netanyahu come to the White House 7 fucking times since the beginning of this administration and convince Donald Trump to start a war that his intelligence community told him would be a disastrous idea. Tulsi Gabbard a year ago told Congress, the director of intelligence of the intelligence community, director of national intelligence, told Congress Iran is not planning on making a nuke. That is per their religious fatwa. And they've been stuck at 60% for the longest period of time. And they have not gone up. And we're watching. So exactly how were they close to making a nuke? How are they a week away? How are they a month away? Per Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner and Mark Levin. That's what all these guys are saying. But really, everything you're saying falls flat on his face when we look at the facts. But more importantly, the whole blockade situation, because that's relevant currently, the whole blockade situation has also been caused by us. Because even after the war started, they were willing to open it. And then we showed we're bad faith actors by closing their ports for what? So we can look like the stronger force? Or maybe it's to stay in the war. And that's potentially what's being happened. I mean, you look at all the facts here. Operation Freedom fails. Donald Trump can't come to the table about peace. Jared Kushner, Stephen Witkoff, and J.D. Vance go to the Middle East. No peace is able to be met. No peace deal actually agreed upon after 48 hours of negotiations or 24 hours or something like that. And then we block their blockade after they open up the strait. It seems like we continuously keep hitting the iron while it's hot. And the reason why we're doing that could be just because of the fact that we want to get back into war. We're just gathering ourselves before we do a second start or we restart the war. That's what it seems like. Because if we wanted peace, shouldn't we have not blocked their ports? Shouldn't we have conceded to some of these demands in the 14-point proposal that was actually reasonable? Shouldn't we have a Middle Eastern delegation in the Middle East right now talking to them constantly on the phone with them? I mean, it almost seems like we are stretching this so that we can continuously stay in this economic war with them and eventually go back to kinetic. That's what it seems like. On its face, I don't think I'm crazy for assuming that.
You know what is an act of war? Putting mines in the water. Why don't the members of Congress, whoever it is complaining about it, they should be all over that. These guys put mines in the water. That alone, mining in the water is illegal, period, under any circumstances, and they've done it. But this is crazy stuff, but this is what they've done. On Cuba, oil blockade on Cuba. There's no oil blockade on Cuba per se. Here's what's happening with Cuba, okay? Cuba used to get free oil.
Yes, there is, though. What's he talking about? Yes, there is. You destroyed Venezuela, which was the main powerhouse for exporting oil to Cuba, and then you threaten Mexico with tariffs if they give Cuba any more oil, which they were planning on doing. So you are blocking oil from them. That's exactly what you've done. Why is he lying? He's such a liar. John EP7, thanks so much. Donating blood, showing the nurses your stream. Hey, W, bro, appreciate it. Shout out to the nurses. We love the nurses. Appreciate you guys.
From Venezuela, used to give them a bunch of free oil. They would take like 60% of that oil and resell it for cash. It wouldn't even go to benefit the people. So the only blockade that's happened is the Cubans have decided, the Venezuelans have decided, we're not giving you free oil anymore. And you can only imagine nowadays, the way oil prices are, no one's giving away free oil, much less to a failed regime. So the problem with Cuba is worse, okay? Their economic model doesn't work. And the people who are in charge can't fix it. And the reason that I can't fix it is not just because they're communists, that's bad enough, but they're incompetent communists. The only thing worse than a communist is an incompetent one. And that's what, so incompetent communists run that country, they don't know how to fix it. They really don't. And we have 90 miles from our shores, a failed state that also happens to be friendly territory for some of our adversaries. So it's an unacceptable status
Are we still going to do the Soviet Union influence in the Caribbean thing? Come on.
quo. I will be addressing it, but not today. Okay. All right, let's go to the front, right there.
Secretary Rubio.
Yeah.
You are going to the Vatican to meet with the Pope. Is this an attempt to smooth things over?
Yes, it's damage control because Donald Trump has been shitting on Catholicism and the Pope for the last 3 weeks.
With the Pope, given the rhetoric between President Trump and Pope Leo?
No, it's a trip we had planned from before, and obviously we had some stuff that happened. And no, look, there's a lot to talk about with the Vatican. I'll give you one example. The Pope just returned from a trip to Africa, where the church is growing very vibrantly. And we have shared concerns about religious freedom, freedom in different parts of the world. We'd love to talk to them about that. The topic of Cuba, we gave Cuba $6 million of humanitarian aid, but obviously they won't let us distribute it. We distributed it through the church. We'd like to do more. We're willing to give more humanitarian aid to Cuba, by the way, distributed through the church, but the Cuban regime has to allow us to do it. They won't allow us to give their own people more humanitarian aid, and we're willing to do it through the church. So there's a lot to talk about.
And the president recently said that the Pope is endangering a lot of Catholics as a result of his rhetoric around the Iran war. Is that a sentiment?
Well, I don't think that's an accurate description of what he said. I think what the president basically said is that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon because they would use it against places that have a lot of Catholics and Christians and others for that matter. It goes back to the central point. I think the president, without trying to speak for him, but I think I can characterize it this way. He doesn't understand why anybody, leave aside the Pope, the president, and I, for that matter, I think most people, I cannot understand why anyone would think that it's a good idea for Iran to ever have a nuclear weapon. Look what they're doing with the Straits right now.
Oh my God, I'm gonna crash out. I'm gonna crash out. It's like a script. He's a robot. Hey, buddy, they weren't going to make one. They weren't going to make one, and you could have diffused the matter without bombing them. Goodness, there's no way he's repeated himself this many times. Can we get better questions?
They're holding the whole world hostage. They have these sailors, on commercial ships that are going to starve to death out there. They don't care. They don't care that this is melting down the economies around the world, even if they're...
Why would they care about? I'm sorry. You're Iran. The United States and Israel is bombing the shit out of you. And your concern is, oh no, are the people manning these ships, do they have food? What? Their sovereignty, their way of life. This is an existential threat. They could potentially be removed from power. Donald Trump said that he's going to send them back to the Stone Age. He said he's going to end a whole civilization tonight. Hello. We are threatening to genocide these people, yet they still have to exercise the ability and being concerned about these oil ships having food? What are you talking about? Trump threatened to bomb their power plants twice and send the country into a catastrophic, cataclysmic terror of blackout, period of blackout. I mean, these are the threats that the current sitting U.S. president is hurling over at Iran as he's attacking them, as he's blocking their ports, and they're supposed to be worried about guys getting food in the Strait of Hormuz? Give me a break. Give me a break. Trying to play the moral high ground when you started a war for Israel doesn't work. Really doesn't.
Own allies. This is what they're doing with the Straits. What do you think they would do if they had a nuclear weapon? They would hold the world hostage with that nuclear weapon.
But Israel has a nuclear weapon. And they actually hold us hostage with their nuclear weapon. Because back in the 70s, when they were at war with Egypt and Syria, funded by the Soviets, they were whooping Israel's ass. And Israel said, if you don't give us to the United States, they told Nixon, the current president at the time, if you don't give us military aid and a military embargo, or a military weapon, we will nuke these Arab countries. So I'm sorry, who actually holds other people in the world hostage with a nuclear threat? It's Israel. And John Kiriakou, for what it's worth, I'll mention this as well, had said and expressed the idea or the speculation that Operation Midnight Hammer was because during the 12-day war, Israel threatened Donald Trump that he would nuke Iran. So Donald Trump had to get involved and stop everything and bomb Iran and end the conflict and threaten them with a U.S. invasion or a U.S. intervention before they continuously destroyed Israel. So who actually leverages a nuclear threat against the world? It's not Iran. They don't even have a nuke. Look at how he's lying through his teeth. He's out of his mind. He's out of his mind. He's a liar. And these people are all deranged. How can you lie this much?
That's what they would do. They would do exactly to the world with a nuclear weapon what they're doing now with the Straits. And I think the president's point is how anyone cannot see that as an unacceptable outcome and an unacceptable risk is beyond him. It's puzzling. And someone has to do something about it. The difference between this president and like the 6 presidents that preceded him were that he's the only one that's actually been willing to do something about it. Everyone says Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, but you got to do something about it at some point.
No. You don't have to do anything about it. You know why? Because they weren't going to make one. And that's why every president said, yeah, they can't have one. Doesn't look like they're making one, so we're not too concerned. Yeah, they're hedging. Yeah, they're getting close. Yeah, no country historically has gone over 30 and not made one. I understand that. But Obama was concerned about that, and he issued the Iranian nuclear deal that several countries were on board about. NATO, EU, China, Russia. Everybody loved it. Donald Trump hated it. So no, it's not that the last few presidents were not smart enough to handle the Iranian issue. They were not dumb enough to start a regional mess. That's first. Secondly, they were also not dumb enough to listen to Benjamin Netanyahu. Because again, per former CIA officers, John Kiriakou and others have said this, Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials have been begging the last 4 or 5 sitting U.S. presidents to bomb Iran. And every single president said, that's beyond the pale. I'm not going that far. Because they knew what would happen. And now look at the reality. We can't even launch Operation Freedom, where we want to guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz for our own economic relief, because Kuwait and Saudi Arabia said, fuck off, you can't use our bases or our airspace anymore, you've caused a regional mess. So we've forfeited our existence in the Middle East by starting this conflict. Again, a regional war. What happens when this is all said and done with? Will we have bases in the Middle East? Will we have any presence in the Middle East, which is a pivotal region in the world? The petrodollar, what happens? It's going to be the yuan dollar soon. BRICS is going to take control. And that's the main commodity that drives U.S. power is our petrodollar. Reserve currency status, hello? It's never been at risk like it is currently. And if we lose our relationships with all of these Gulf countries, then that really manifests or materializes into a potential reality in the next 5 to 10 years. Couple in the fact that China is also advancing faster than they ever have. Couple in the fact that reserves of oil and Russia making money on gas has been exponentially greater than it has been before because we've released sanctions on them as a result from the economic pressure this war has introduced. But the nukes, worry about the nukes because the nukes are all that you need to think about. Not the fact that we don't have any power in the Gulf anymore. Not the fact that MBS is probably frustrated with the president of the United States. No. Just worry about enrichment. Michaka, thank you for the 5. Appreciate it, bro.
And he's been willing to address that threat. And that's what he promised he would do when he got elected, by the way, is address threats like this.
No, he promised when he'd get elected that he would start no new wars. He started a brand new war.
Yeah, I wish I knew your name.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary.
Can you put name tags on?
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary.
Who are you with? Who are you with?
I'm with Rubio Media Network.
Okay.
Mr. Secretary, the President has said multiple times that weapons were provided to the Kurdish groups to pass on the Iranian people. However, Kurdish political parties and the regional government says they have not received such weapons. Even some claim these weapons remain in the U.S. base in the region. Can you clarify who those weapons were given to and whether you intend to retrieve them or still want to pass to the Iranian people?
Yeah, look, ultimately, what the president is expressing, and I think has repeatedly, is he wished the Iranian people had, look, he's heartbroken by these images. You think about it, you're an Iranian, okay? You're unhappy that your economy doesn't work for you. You don't have freedom. You don't have an opportunity to express yourself. You've got friends that have been shot in the head because they're out protesting. And it's heartbreaking to him to see that these people are abused in this way and have no measures to take against their own government as a result of it.
Maybe I'll stop playing these videos because I'm like having to go all the way back to square one and debunk the propaganda. Yeah, okay, Iranians getting shot in the head because they're protesting. Because we were involved. Because we were making the matter worse. We threatened regime change via an organic uprising of the civilian population, which is arguably not even that many people because at this point, we've probably shifted everybody's opinion from being against the IRGC to in support of the IRGC if it means no Israeli leader being in charge of Iran. So those protests and us being involved did nothing. The IRGC shut it down. You want to talk about people getting shot in the back of the head? How about the Palestinians who are trying to rush to aid during a starvation that was imposed intentionally by Israel and the families are being shot for collecting flour? How about that? You never spoke about that. Donald Trump never acknowledged that. That was done by our best buddies, Israel and the IDF. The other day in the West Bank, some kid was shot in the head after, I believe, his wife delivered a baby. I mean, these stories are all over the place. These stories are all over the place. You want to talk about a brutal regime? How about Israeli settlers getting into the West Bank? The IDF lets them. They admitted that to CNN, even though it's illegal according to international law and Israeli law. They took a Palestinian, tied his genitals up, tied his hands behind his back, and paraded him to his village. I'm not even kidding. Ass naked. This is the sick, demonic shit they do to Palestinians in the West Bank. And we're talking about humanitarian rights and people being able to express themselves. Hello, they kill their livestock. They burn their houses down. They shoot kids in the back of the head at military checkpoints after telling them to turn around, wait for them to get far enough, and then shoot them in the back as a joke. And they laugh about it and they post it online. And we're talking about humanitarian rights. Look, the IRGC is not an innocent regime. But if we're going to hold the IRGC accountable, maybe we should do the same thing for the Israeli Defense Force. For somebody saying, source in the chat, check out my last few streams. It was like 2 or 3 streams ago I went over it at the end of the stream. They literally tied a Palestinian man's genitals up and paraded him in the air in front of his family. Beat the shit out of him. My buddy who went to the West Bank tried to get into the Holy Mosque, got turned around, and then Israeli soldiers, just for the hell of it, beat the shit out of him with the butts of their guns. Almost killed him. Bruises all over his body when he got back to the United States after he was questioned for like 7 hours. and we're talking about a brutal regime, we're talking about humanitarian rights, let's talk about Gaza. Let's talk about the West Bank. Not because I'm being a bleeding heart liberal. I care about those people. Those are my people. But really so you can be morally consistent. Because I'd highlight and expose how you're morally inconsistent. Because people in the West Bank are suffering. And they've been suffering for years, decades. 100,000 dead in Gaza. I don't hear anything. All it is Hamas is in the tunnels. Hamas is in the hospitals. In Lebanon, a guy was in the car with his family. He got a call from Mossad likely, and they told him, we're going to drone strike your car or you can get out and run so we kill you alone. The decision is yours. The guy jumps out the vehicle and hurtles towards death. I mean, what are we talking about morality for? So...
By the way, this goes back, if you guys remember the protests in 2009 where they slaughtered people in the street. This is a vicious regime, guys. Okay? These are people that hang people from the cranes in the town square so everyone can see.
You want to talk about hanging people? I'll do you one better. Ben-Gvir, who is a national security official for Israel, celebrated a law being passed where they can hang Palestinian prisoners after a certain amount of time they spend in prison. I forget the stipulations, but they can pretty much hang Palestinians for no good reason without due process. And it's legal now. And do you know how they celebrated that vicious law being passed? Since we're talking about morality, since we're all moral high ground now, his wife gave him a birthday cake with a noose on it, and he wears a noose pin everywhere he goes. And we're really talking about morality. But the IRGC hangs people. They tie Palestinian people's balls up and parade them in the air. They burn their livestock to the ground. They explode their homes. What the fuck? What are you talking about? There's a noose on the cake. There's a noose on the cake. They're parading killing people. And by the way, as a Palestinian in the West Bank, sneezing wrong can get you arrested. So think about how this law will be abused for the next God knows how many years. And we're talking about morality. But no, you can't say that. You can't say that. You can't say that. So I digress. PFF 1974, $5. The propaganda is ambiguous. The Trump administration is sanctioning and bombing the Iranian people, whilst Rubio is saying they need to be freed. Yeah, I mean, really, this is because they all don't know what the hell they're doing. Thanks for the 5. They all have no idea what they're doing there. Rubio and Vance are probably behind closed doors punching the air because they know this war is stupid. So I'm not so dense. I do understand they have to defend the war because the sitting president has charged and launched the war. And so I suppose to be somewhat gracious to their credit, they have to defend it because they have the idea or they have the plans of running in 2028, but they can't let this administration crash right now. But at the same time, they're not smart either. J.D. Vance has echoed for this war to take place for years. J.D. Vance was previously a never-Trumper. J.D. Vance also said that he wants this war to happen. Now he's walking it back. Now he's trying to be the broker of peace deals. Dumbass flew to Islamabad and got nothing done, flew back, sat at the table for 40 hours, no peace deal, wasn't the hero he tried to pose as. And so I don't really like any of these guys. Look, all these guys want is political power. None of them are ideologically grounded. That's why I don't respect them. I can respect somebody who has a bad ideology, but at least really believes it. None of these guys believe anything they're saying. They just want to have power. They just want to be in the Oval Office. They just want to be in Washington. They want to be in the White House. And so they'll say anything that you need to hear so you can vote for them. That's why I don't like these guys. And I get it. That's politics. It's a vicious game. You have to play the game. But to some degree, can somebody stand on business and say this is stupid? Can somebody be a truth martyr? Please, inside of the White House. Please. Joe Kent's not enough. I need more. And I need more relevant people to do it. The GOP is dead. It's going to crash and burn. You might as well exercise your ability and forfeit now. You might as well get out before it all sinks to the bottom of the ground or the bottom of the ocean. So it's like, bro, I'm not giving him any benefit. And I'm not spazzing on you, by the way. I appreciate your insight with the super chat. I'm just saying, like, I get it. Vance probably thinks this is a bad idea, but Vance also tried to strike Iran before. He banked on that at the RNC. He said these things before. Oh, we need to strike Iran. Iran is the first country that we have to worry about in regards to a nuclear threat. Vance is just a dumbass. He just runs with the wind. He's a leaf in the wind. So none of these guys are ideologically centered. None of them have any grounding. They don't have any balls. They don't have 2 feet to stand on with 10 toes on each foot. They all just are brushes in the wind, and they'll go with whatever the president says so they can stay in their positions, so they can make their money, so they can seize their donors, and so they could potentially be president in 2028. Those are not the people that I want in control of the country. Newsflash, shocker. So yeah, I'm going to attack him. Even if he may be against it, you're going to use the propaganda to this degree. At least be a little bit more neutral and go, look, we're trying to end the conflict in Iran. We're effectuating some of our goals. We're reaching some of our goals. It's going to be a matter of time until we get there. Be a little bit more vague. You're running with the Hasbara and the propaganda. That's not true. Again, you want to be morally consistent? Well, then talk about the West Bank, because J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have been repeatedly asked about the West Bank since October. And J.D. Vance says, Israel is not going to annex the West Bank. That's going to continue to be our goal. Donald Trump says they're not going to do anything with the West Bank. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, an Israeli settler is probably burning down some village in the West Bank, or probably burning down some house. Like, they're not doing anything about it. So don't believe this moral consistency. This is bullshit. By the way, we just killed 3,000 people in this war. Innocent non-combatants. Oh, but that's a part of war, though. That's a part of war. A war for who? A war for Israel. We just killed 3,000 people for Israel. And you're going to talk about a moral high ground? You're going to talk about the IRGC hanging people? Shut the fuck up. Shut up, honestly. Whoever cared about the IRGC? It has nothing to do with the United States. Nothing. Nothing. They don't have intercontinental missiles. They don't have a nuclear weapon. They weren't going to make one until we attacked them and gave them a better reason to make one. If if Iran got a nuclear weapon, they would just be in North Korea. They would just sit where they are and no one would bother them. I'm not saying I want them to have a nuke, but that's probably what they would do. They have their proxy network.
They continue these executions of people and have continue to do so for over a decade and a half now. And so I think what the president is expressing is the desire that he wishes the Iranian people had an ability to fight back against some of these things that are happening to them. And I would view that as distinct and separate from the specifics of this operation that was ongoing before it concluded, and certainly different from the operation that's going on now. Right there in the
regarding Colombia, Mr. Secretary,
right behind you, not Colombia, right there. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much. On Lebanon, are
Yes.
we in a ceasefire or less fire? And the second question, do you think you would be able to achieve an agreement between Lebanon and Israel without risking a civil war in Lebanon? What are you doing to risk? What are you doing to?
No, I got it. I got the gist of your question. So look, here's the challenge with Lebanon. Okay. There's no problem between the Lebanese government and the Israeli government. Israel doesn't claim any land in Lebanon belongs to them. And by and large, I think a peace deal between Lebanon and Israel is imminently achievable and should be. The problem with Israel and Lebanon is not Israel or Lebanon, it's Hezbollah. Hezbollah operates from inside of Lebanese territory. They terrorize and attack Israelis, but they also are inflicting tremendous damage on the Lebanese people. The reason why Lebanon gets attacked by Israel is because of...
I had a chat that I missed. Sorry. Sagnos Sprite says it's crazy seeing so much propaganda in real time. Thanks so much for the chat. Good to see you, Sagnos. And yeah, it's nuts. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I'm just crashing out.
Hezbollah, because Hezbollah's hiding in some house,
Apple Maps just removed every single name of the municipalities and villages in southern Lebanon, by the way.
launching rockets against
But no, just believe Marco.
Israelis, and then they get hit. So what you're seeing now is Israeli responses to either attacks or perceived threats. And this is not new. This has been...
No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is when they get an intelligence heads up of a Hezbollah official, a military commander, or somebody who's high ranking in Hezbollah, they carpet bomb the area. They don't care about who dies to kill that person because they want to rid southern Lebanon of any Iranian proxy influence so they can take it because they believe the land belongs to them. That's what they say. It's the same thing with the West Bank, and it's the same thing with Gaza. They want to ethnically cleanse these places. Charlie Kirk, the biggest Christian Zionist in the last decade, even said himself on Patrick Bet-David's podcast a few years ago, Israel is obviously trying to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip. You don't think they're trying to do the same thing in southern Lebanon? They've been bombing the shit out of it. And on the day of the ceasefire, April 7th, they bombed it 100 times in the morning and killed hundreds of people. Beirut in southern Lebanon. What's their goal? They want to annex it. They want to take it. They believe it is theirs. Hello, from the Nile to the Euphrates, Old Testament, that's what they're following.
Going on for a very long time.
Desert Joe, thank you so much for the 5 gifted, my friend. Appreciate you, man. W's in the chat for Desert Joe, always showing support. Show him some love in the chat and say thank you if you were just gifted a membership. Really appreciate you, bro. Boss. Thank you so much.
What is our hope? Our hope is to engage the Lebanese and Israeli governments under, our mediation at the table to achieve this. And that is having Lebanese armed forces and a Lebanese government, not just with a willingness, but with the capability to begin to challenge Hezbollah and disarm them. Because the Lebanese people are also victims of Hezbollah. And by the way...
Oh my God, no they're not.
On the topic of Hezbollah...
They parade Hezbollah.
in Lebanon. Who is behind Hezbollah? Why do they exist? They're an agent of Iran. If you go through that Middle East and you identify every problem, Hamas, Hezbollah, to some extent the Houthis, obviously, and others, behind every one of these groups is Tehran. So,
yeah, but again, we do this all the time. I don't mean to make this class. Why? Why do these proxies exist? Have you asked yourself that question? Why does Hezbollah exist? Well, it's because of the creation of Israel. You go back to the 80s, that's quite obvious. Why does Hamas exist? It's because of the creation of Israel. Everything stems from the Palestine question. The Palestinians were pushed out of their land. Colonialism, apartheid state, whatever you want to say, the Palestinians were kicked from their homes, they were expelled, the Nakba, 700,000 people expelled from their homes. And so you had this grievance across the entire Middle East, all the Arab nations geared up against Israel. And that's what birthed all of these resistance groups. And to this day, Israel is violently aggressive against Palestinians in the West Bank or any sort of Palestinian occupied territory. And as a result, they breed resistance, which is why Hamas exists. Every single member of Hamas probably has a dead parent. That's not me defending Hamas or October 7th. That's not what I'm doing. What I am saying is that happened for a reason. You cannot just start the story in the middle because you'll be confused. You'll be uninformed. That's just the facts. That's just the facts. Hamas is not innocent. They've done crazy things, but you have to be an idiot, an absolute dimwit, dense and hollow-headed to think that they just exist for the sole reason or purpose of terrorism and that's it. That's not it. That's not it. And we will never address the alleged issue if you continue to run with that lie. That stone-faced, one-sided lie. There's two sides to the coin. There's two sides to the coin there. And you have to address both if you want to actually understand what is happening in the Middle East. So, and what's the solution? It's a two-state or one-state solution. Give the Palestinians a right to self-determination. Gaza Strip is an open-air prison. They don't get anything. These people are barred from the world. Open it up. Give them maritime trade. Give them the ability of autonomy. It's a small strip.
Apart from the nuclear weapons, apart from all these other things, these guys are behind all the bad actors. Hezbollah is a wing. It's an extension of Iranian desire to destabilize the region. So we're very committed to this process. It's not going to be easy. You're asking me a complex question. You know this has been going on for a very long time. It's not going to be easy. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that both sides continue to talk so that progress can be made on some sort of permanent ceasefire that isn't constantly spoiled by Hezbollah and by Hezbollah violence. Right in there.
Thank you, sir.
I'm winging it, guys, okay? Right there, yes, sir.
You mentioned the 2 U.S. ships that safely crossed the Strait of Hormuz. Are other ships being told it's safer to get back to regular levels, or are we still going to see limits in place for the foreseeable future?
For obvious reasons, I'm not going to broadcast who we're talking to or who we're telling them to move. I mean, we want these operations to be safe, and I think as it unfolds and ships get through, we'll make those announcements after the fact, just for operational security purposes. But the goal here is pretty simple. Establish a zone of transit that is protected by a bubble, the United States, both naval and air assets, and then allow ships who want to move through there and get to market, to begin to increase confidence in the ability to do so. That doesn't happen in 12 hours. It takes time to set up that bubble and gain that confidence, but that's the goal. We have been in touch. We've been in touch, I don't know, with a bunch of different liners about moving. And
So anyways, in regards to Lebanon, this is the current situation. So this article here by the RNZ reads, Senior Hezbollah commander killed by Israel in Beirut suburbs, source close to group says. So this article reads, a senior commander from Hezbollah's elite force has been killed in an Israeli airstrike on Beirut's southern suburbs, the first on the area in nearly a month, a source close to the group said. At least 11 other people were killed in strikes across the south and east, according to the Lebanese health ministry. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his military had targeted the commander of Hezbollah's Radwan force. The source close to Hezbollah told AFP on condition of anonymity that Malik Balut, the operations commander in the Radwan force, was killed. Lebanon's state-run national news agency had reported that Israeli warplanes launched an attack targeting Ghabeiri in the southern suburbs, a Hezbollah stronghold. An AFP correspondent saw a building covered in rubble following the strike as people left the area with their belongings. Many of the southern suburbs residents had already left after Hezbollah drew Lebanon into the Middle East war in March and have not returned despite the truth in force since 17th of April. A Lebanese security source told an AFP on condition of anonymity that the strike hit an apartment in which Radwan's leaders were holding a meeting. Beirut and its southern suburbs had been spared Israeli attacks since the 8th of April, when a massive Israeli strike across the entire country killed more than 350 people. Wednesday's attack local time came as the U.S. President Donald Trump says there was a very good chance of sealing a peace deal with Iran. Yeah, not if this keeps happening. Not if this keeps happening. If Israel's bloodthirsty to kill all the leadership of a faction they can't destroy, then we'll never see peace. Oh, they killed this leader. They killed this leader. It's not working, though. It's not working. So they should stop. These are some videos.
هيدي سنوية الشهيد قعير. هيدا المبنى اللي انضرب يا 4 طوابق يا 5 طوابق. ضربة هون يا شباب. يا عالم في حد.
I'm going to click off of that before there's a body that's shown. But you can see here, this is from the Middle East Eye. Israel has bombed Beirut's southern suburbs in its first direct strike on the Lebanese capital since the April ceasefire, escalating fears of a wider regional war as Israeli attacks across Lebanon continue. The airstrike targeted Ghabeiri area in southern Beirut, or really a suburb, causing major destruction in densely populated neighborhoods. So.
دغري عنا بوش البيت دغري بوش البيت عندي الضربة يا عالم في حدا هون في حدا هون
I think we're good.
في كهرباء عم بكهربوا العالم كله ما حدا ضربة هون يا شباب هيدي سنوية الشهيد قعير هيدا المبنى اللي انضرب.
Yeah. And so this is what I was talking about earlier. I was telling that story about the guy running out of his car from a drone strike and a threat by Mossad, and people thought that I was crazy. Look at this. I'll go ahead and show you guys right here. Let me catch up on a chat. I think I missed one. Give me one moment. Let's see. Like the video if you have not already, guys. I appreciate all the love. Sagno Sprite says, don't forget about Jared Kushner's new Gaza peace plan. Yeah, they want to turn it into a tourist hub, you know? That's what they want. They want to ethnically cleanse the strip and make it this, you know, capital where they can make a ton of money, turn it into a tourist hub, because Gaza is in a beautiful location. It has a lot of potential. So look at this. So this here reads, A young man in Lebanon received a call from occupational forces warning he would be targeted. He left the car and ran into a nearby field to protect him or to protect others, and a moment later, a drone strike hit him. So this is him running out the car, and he likely got a phone call very similar, reminiscent to what I've been talking about with the Mossad and what they do. They'll call these Iranian scientists. Well, maybe this guy has something to do with Hezbollah. I'm not sure of the details. They call him and they say, we're either going to strike your car or we're going to kill you individually. You better get out. And so he runs out, gets away from his family. And you can hear the drone strike.
مروا يا علي مدد الله أكبر ضربوه يا الله
ضربوا. So he's saying they hit him.
ضربوه للشاب اللي هرب يا الله.
And this is like very common. This is
just imagine you're driving.
These are the lengths they go to. And I'm showing you guys this because I was talking about it a moment ago.
With your family, it's a normal day. You get a phone call. You pick up the phone, and on the other side, someone is telling you a drone is being sent to your location right now. You have a few seconds. And in those few seconds, they send you an ultimatum. They tell you either you perish right where you are in your car with you and your family, or you get out and you run away and you perish alone. I honestly wish this was one of those like, what would you do situations where we're just imagining it and it's not actual reality. But this is a situation that happened in South Lebanon just a few days ago. And the video is out there for people to see. People are driving. They see a guy get out of his car and immediately start running to a field. A few seconds after that, you hear an explosion.
Hold on. Technical difficulties here. My mouse just died. I have batteries. Give me 1 second, guys. 1 second here. How the hell do you change the battery on this? I know there's a way. Oh, does this require a charger? Oh my God. This is embarrassing. 1 second, guys. There's no way. Is the video done? Here, I'll keep playing the video while I figure this out.
And he was martyred. MashaAllah, look at the guy's iman. Didn't even think twice about it. Within a few seconds, immediately started running into a field alone. Definitely scared, but didn't think twice about it because he wants to protect his family. And this isn't a one-off case, by the way. We've got multiple reports of this happening throughout the years. Over 20 years, people going through the exact same stuff, sitting at home with their families. They get a phone call. They even have to convince their families to let them go out alone. Imagine that. Imagine you go to your mum or your wife or your brother and you say, please, I need to leave. Don't come with me. And it's the last time you're ever going to see them. So forgive me if I don't believe them when they say that they're the most moral army in the world and all the other nonsense that they try to brainwash you with. Just imagine you're driving with your family. It's a normal day. You get a phone call. You pick up the phone and on the other side, someone is telling you a drone is...
There we go. Mouse died. It's crazy, you know? That is... I mean, can you... And this is what we were talking about. John Kiriakou was saying the same thing. Mossad would call these Iranian scientists, these Iranian nuclear scientists that are, of course, in charge of enriching the uranium, being a part of the process. And so they answer this phone call, and on the other end is an Israeli asset or a Mossad agent, and he says, you're going to die tomorrow, or you're going to die in the next 10 seconds. And this is what they're doing to the people in southern Lebanon, you know? So it's like reminiscent of the pager attack. I see Myron just texted me. Let's see what he's doing. Crazy, crazy stuff.
So let me also...
All right, so we'll call him on Discord. 1 second, guys. 1 second. I'm like literally, I have the mouse. I'm like holding the wire as I'm like doing this. Where is Discord? What is wrong with my computer? There we go. Okay. But yeah, crazy, crazy stuff. And then I'll show you guys this as well.
This CCTV video shows a group of Israeli settlers breaking into a vital water pumping station in Ain Samia in the occupied West Bank. They smashed monitors, cut wires, and damaged pipes. And at other sites in the area, videos show a settler attacking a water pipe, another spraying a substance that appears to be pepper spray at Palestinian workers, and even settlers' children trying to damage a pipe. Attacks by extremist settlers on Palestinian water sites in the West Bank have soared in recent years. According to the UN, 57 water and sanitation structures were destroyed, vandalized, or taken over by settlers in 2021. That surged to 387 in 2025. The pumping station in Ain Samia supplies water to around 100,000 Palestinians across more than 20 communities. Just this year, it's been attacked at least 10 times. Across the West Bank, there have also been incidents of settlers slashing Palestinian water tanks. All of this means Palestinians' taps can run dry for hours or even days at a time.
And this is what I'm talking about. Marco Rubio speaks to the press, and he says the IRGC is the most immoral army, the worst people in the world. They hang Iranians for fighting against the government. And I don't agree with that, and I can agree with some of that rhetoric. Yeah, the IRGC is an immoral regime. They do evil things. That doesn't mean we need to overthrow them now, because now we're in a full-scale, long-term war with economic back-end consequences that we can't deal with long-term. We're using the moral high ground, and this is what's happening to Palestinians in the West Bank. And this is actually an issue we can fix. And if we fix this issue, then maybe Iran would not be as charged up. You know, it always kind of starts with Israel. If we tell Israel, hey, no more bombing southern Lebanon, hey, no more annexing the West Bank, that's kind of what Obama was trying to do, by the way, which is why they hated him, especially towards the end of his term. Well, then maybe, just maybe, if we controlled Israel, if we put a leash on them, we'd have more peace in the region. And there'd be less motivation for these attacks, for these resistance groups. They make the matter so much worse than it ever needed to be because they provoke people. Look at the shit they're doing. They're fucking with their water. Farm animals.
Animals struggle and crops suffer, all in an area prone to heat waves where water is already scarce. Israel controls roughly 80% of the West Bank's water resources under peace agreements from the 1990s. And water allocations to Palestinians haven't changed since, despite a surge in population. To make up the shortfall, the Palestinian Authority buys water from Israel's national water company at a high price, according to Israeli human rights nonprofit B'Tselem. Israel says it transfers around 90 million cubic meters of water to the Palestinian Authority each year. But water inequality in the West Bank runs deep. The average Israeli consumed 247 litres a day in 2020, while for Palestinians in the West Bank, it was just 82.4 litres. According to experts, attacks on Palestinian water are part of a wider fight for control as Palestinians are being pushed off their land. The Israeli Authority, Kogat, also said that claims Israel uses water to control Palestinians in the West Bank were biased and did not reflect the reality on the ground. This CCTV video shows a group of Israeli settlers breaking into a vital water pumping station.
I can keep going, by the way. And
this was the cake for Itamar Ben-Gvir's 50th birthday. It says, congratulations.
Oh, the IRGC hangs people. All right, what about this news cake?
Minister Ben-Gvir, sometimes dreams come true. Israel's far-right Minister of National Security has worn the image of the noose with pride, the symbol of a new law that mandates the death penalty for Palestinians convicted of killing Israelis. It makes hanging the default method of execution. The law effectively establishes the death penalty as a punishment exclusively for Palestinians convicted of nationalistic crimes, but not Jewish Israelis convicted of nationalistic murders of Palestinians. A coalition of human rights organizations in Israel called the bill an official stamp of approval on a policy of vengeance and racist violence against Palestinians. Ben-Gvir popped champagne in parliament when the bill was passed into law in March. At his birthday,
this is the national security official celebrating with, by the way, maybe able to see it in this video, they all have noose pins on. He has one, he has one. I mean, again, I'm only bringing this up to highlight that it's not just, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just the IRGC. Hey, our greatest ally is doing the same shit too. They've been doing it since the 40s and 50s, actually. So, never be fooled by the MAGA administration.
in March. At his birthday party, Ben-Gvir got a congratulations message from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said, "Many blessings, not just from me, but also from my wife, to your wife, and the whole family." This was the cake for...
No international outrage, no outcry, no condemnation from this administration, nothing. Nothing at all. This is the things that they do. You know? And then this is what I was talking about earlier.
We can now add sexual assault to the types of violence Palestinians say they face from Israeli settlers here.
Devo Nuts, pause, says, "Welcome Pain hoodie, let's go." Yes, sir. Love Welcome Pain.
In the occupied West Bank. This is the tent where a Palestinian man named Kusai says Israeli settlers stormed in, seized him before using these zip ties to bind him by his hands and legs. He then says they cut off his underwear before tying his genitals with one of these zip ties and then parading him around his village in front of his family.
I mean, like, I say this stuff, I'll tell the chat these stories and people in the chat will go, "Is this real?" This is what they do every day. Every day in the West Bank. And we're worried about the IRGC hanging people. How about worry about this too? Be a little consistent.
على الخيمة جوا أول بلشوا في ضرب بوكسات ضرب بوكسات.
He said they pulled me inside the tent and started beating me.
وربطوا رجلي أخذوا الحزام يعني الشاط قطعوا هذا يتقطع ها شايف كيف قطع وقطعوا البوكسر اللي لابسه.
And the boxers I was wearing, they cut it, they zip tied my genitals when I was bound and beat me. And you could see his eyes bloody here. You know? I mean, this is what they do. Look at this 75-year-old man they beat to death. Almost beat to death. See if I can find this here. I could just go on with this for days, you know? And this is just to highlight, again, the inconsistency of this administration. So... crazy, crazy stuff.
Rifles aimed directly at us, Israel, and walk us back to our vehicle. They say they're trying to establish order between settlers and Palestinians. But as the cameras keep rolling, it becomes clear these soldiers are here in service of the settler movement.
We are here because this is our place. So what was that, Marco Rubio? They're not trying to annex these places that don't belong to them? So the West Bank is yours? Of course, it's all ours. And not just for the soldiers, for all the people as well, all the Jewish people. Look at this old man they beat to almost death.
In Taysir, settlers took the land at the expense of 75-year-old Abdullah Darahme. His breathing is labored, his face...
But Marco Rubio talks about the IRGC. Fuck this administration. Fuck Marco Rubio. Fuck all of them. How about that? So, that's that. I don't want to get too into it because whatever. But got to bury him where he stands there. I got to really, really take all his points and throw them in the ground because he's completely wrong.
Commercial ships, along with American destroyers, have already safely transited the strait, showing the lane is clear. We know the Iranians are embarrassed by this fact. They said they control the strait. They do not. So American ships led the way, commercial and military, shouldering the initial risk from the front, as Americans always do. And right now, hundreds more ships from nations around the world are lining up to transit. CENTCOM, along with partner nations, is in active communication with hundreds of ships, shipping companies, and insurers. All of these ships from all around the world want to get out of the Iranian trap that they have been stuck inside.
Yeah, circumstances caused by the United States of an unprovoked invasion. Mo Camera Short says, so-called Sheikh Uthman refuses to condemn UAE. Are you talking about Uthman ibn Farouk or Uthman al-Khamis? Who are you talking about?
As a direct gift from the United States to the world, we have established a powerful red, white, and blue dome over the strait. American destroyers are on station, supported by hundreds of fighter jets, helicopters, drones, and surveillance aircraft, providing 24/7 overwatch for peaceful commercial vessels, except Iran's, of course, which is why our ironclad blockade remains in full effect as well. In fact, 6 ships tried to run the blockade out of Iranian ports as Project Freedom commenced, and they were all turned around.
Ibn Farouk, yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate. It's Leo Reaction, thanks for the $2. Yeah, I covered that. I already went over the fact that Saudi Arabia and Kuwait said the United States cannot use their air power, or sorry, their airspace or their bases. I went over that already. Go back in the stream, you'll see it. And then, yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to attack Sheikh Uthman. I'm not going to do that, but he's wrong. He's wrong. I'm sorry. The UAE is not only closely aligned with Israel, they have a security axis with Israel. More importantly, arguably, at least for me, this is my vested interest, they've destroyed my country, my homeland, Sudan. They fund the main proxy there that has killed so many civilians and displaced millions, that being the Rapid Support Forces. To this day, they're still droning them. And now Ethiopia is allegedly involved. I mean, the whole issue in Sudan has become very convoluted, but one thing is very clear. The UAE has displaced and genocided the shit out of Sudan and Khartoum, Al-Fashir, other provinces outside of the capital as well, and even in the north. They fund all of these paramilitary factions, all of these random African countries from Chad and others. They come into Khartoum, they displace the people, and they exploit them for their gold, which is what the UAE is going to have to depend on in the near future, because global oil will no longer be the hottest commodity in the next few generations or next few decades. So, yeah, it's unfortunate if somebody doesn't condemn the UAE. I'll say that. That's unfortunate. I don't care. I'll condemn them. I don't need to visit the country. Don't care. Don't care. The UAE is a Jewish-controlled state that has genocided Sudan. Fuck you if you disagree. Give a fuck what you have to say. Fuck you. Get the money out your pockets. Don't give a fuck what you're saying. Fuck out of here. That's something I'm unapologetic about. I'll get like Myron when it comes to that shit. The UAE is a more. Go fuck yourself. How about that? How about that? Have some fucking humanity. Have some balls. Have some balls, because you know they're doing it. And I'm not talking to Uthman ibn Farouk. I'm not talking to anybody. But seriously, like, if you can't condemn the UAE for what they've did to Sudan, the evidence is everywhere. It's undeniable that they're involved. So, like, yeah, I'm not with that. I'm not with that.
Ask you more directly, is the ceasefire over?
No, the ceasefire is not over. Ultimately, this is a separate and distinct.
And that's, again, like I said, I'm not attacking him. Maybe he's misinformed. I don't know. Look, in regards to the Iranian conflict, I want to make sure I'm abundantly clear here. In regards to the Iranian conflict, a lot of people have come out supporting the UAE, and understandably so. Iran has struck the UAE out of nowhere because of the fact that they're just closely aligned with Israel, and of course, as a result of that, the United States. So they've seen them as the main target. They've got over 1,000 strikes. They've hit a ton of critical infrastructure. I'm not saying I support that. I don't think violence meets violence all the time. Like, I'm not calling for that. I never will. I think that that's wrong. But at the same time, if you can't voice condemnation for what the UAE has done to Sudan, if you can't voice condemnation for the fact that they're closely aligned with Israel, really, it's like, come on. You're either being paid or you're misinformed. You know, so I'll say at the most that I don't appreciate that. I don't know if that's really his opinion. That's what you're telling me. I don't appreciate that. We're all Muslim. We're all one ummah, right? All right. So we got to call out the aggressors, especially from the inside. I'm just, you know, I know you're not supposed to talk about the ruler, and I can't help myself.
Project, and we expected there would be some churn at the beginning, which happened, and we said we would defend aggressively, and we absolutely have. Iran knows that, and ultimately, the president's going to make a decision whether anything were to escalate into a violation of a ceasefire. But certainly, we would urge Iran to be prudent in the actions that they take to keep that underneath this threshold. This is about the straits. This is about freedom of navigation. This is about international waterways. This is about free flow of commerce, all the things that happened before, and only Iran is contesting. So right now the ceasefire certainly holds, but we're going to be watching very, very closely.
Yeah, so that's Pete Cope, Seth, talking about the situation. Again, just banking on all of you to be idiots, but you're not. We all know what's actually going on. So, yeah. If you're just getting here, welcome to the stream. Like the video. Just go back to the beginning. I covered all the news and what's been happening and my predictions as to what's going to happen later. But look at this. This is the Parliament Speaker, Mohammed Ghalibaf, and he tweets, "Operation Trust Me Bro failed. Now back to the routine with Operation Foxios." It's like they're mocking us in our face, bro. They're literally mocking us in our face. By Foxios, he means like Axios, the fake news outlet. I think that's what he's referring to. But it's like, bro, that was his response. I forgot to show you guys that earlier. And if you're new here, or if you're new to the stream, sorry, I went over this earlier, but I'll quickly reiterate. So Saudi Arabia refused to allow the United States to use its bases and airspace for a Project Freedom, or Operation Freedom, which was a key reason for President Trump suspending the operation. I mean, did Myron and I not call it? Did we not call it? We told you guys we would lose our relationships in the Middle East if we start this war. And now we're seeing all the effects of that prediction. All the effects of this bad decision we made. So, I mean, bro, what did we try to tell you? I went over it extensively earlier, so, yeah. And I mean, just, bro, like, are we, come on. IDF soldier, let me get this on screen here. Nice and big for you guys. New photo alleges another case of IDF troops desecrating Christian symbols in South Lebanon. Image reportedly from the town of Debel shows soldier mocking the Virgin Mary statue by placing a cigarette in her mouth. And I mean, it's like, you know, bro. Again, our closest ally, most moral army in the world. Really? This is why I go so hard on people who are with the idea of attacking Iran, because it serves those people, not us. Anyways, let's see what our boy Ben said. I didn't get to watch this, but I saw the caption. I thought it'd be interesting.
Nick Fuentes, who calls himself America First. Apparently, America First means now being a Democrat. Here was Fuentes admitting his agenda.
I care about affordability. I care about foreign interventions. I care about the border. I'm a non-woke moderate Democrat. I think the GOP needs to be destroyed. I think the corrupt criminal government of Trump needs to be slowed down. We need to impeach the orange. It's time to put this in a peach. Trump needs to be placed inside of a crystal. He needs to be impeached. This fat orange, tiny hands needs to be impeached. And then in 28, no Vance, no Rubio. We have to burn down the whole party.
Again, points for honesty. At least Fuentes says the thing out loud. He also admits, by the way, that the only thing keeping him going is Israel. You'll notice that he is wearing a half zip for James Fishbeck, the Florida
here we go.
candidate for governor, who is going to clock in well below 10% in the Republican primaries. We'll get to that in a little while. He says basically the only thing keeping him going at all right now is Israel, because that's the point of unity. Right? That is the point where, again, the left and the new left all come together.
Dude, my war against Israel is the only thing keeping me going at this point. Immigration, who gives a Country's over. It's over. Have you been outside? Do you ever actually even leave the studio? Do you know what it's like out there? We're already a
Nigga's not wrong. Nigga's not wrong.
White country.
Okay. He is just a member of the left, but who calls himself a member of the right. So,
isn't Daily Wire like failing horribly? Didn't they just lay off like 50% of their staff? Ben, just give it up, bro. Give up the media thing. Do something else with your time. No, but I mean, yeah, obviously immigration is kind of a lost cause, right? I mean, if you look at like, the cause for white nationalists and the fight against immigration, that's a really tough uphill battle that they're going to have to face over the next few years. And it just doesn't seem like the wind is blowing in their favorable direction. I mean, look at major cities, So, of course, Nick says, I'm just focused on Israel, controlling our affairs, everything else, the Israeli lobby. Ben Shapiro doesn't like that. But, I can see what he's saying. He wants to punish the GOP. And I just spent like 40 minutes attacking Marco Rubio, but it's because of the blasphemous things that he says and the moral inconsistency. You got to get tired of it as an American who actually has some sort of intelligence. But the thing about Ben Shapiro is a few years ago, this guy was like all the hype. A few years ago, if you wanted based right-wing politics, you watched a Ben Shapiro debate. He was desecrating these college kids, absolutely smoking them in debates, super based, facts don't care about your feelings. And now he's like one of the most hated people on the internet because of the rise of Candace Owens leaving Daily Wire. That was really the biggest fork in the road at the early outset of their fall. But Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, all these people rising to the levels of fame that they have now gotten to has done nothing except destroy Ben Shapiro's platform and all of his talking points. And that's because he's an Israel firster. And he's been called out on this. And now he's attacking Sneeko. I think he went off about the whole club situation in Miami where Sneeko, Nick, and my brother and Andrew Tate and everybody was there. And the song was played. And it's just hilarious. It's like, no one's listening to you anymore. So I don't even find it worth it to like react to Ben Shapiro clips, honestly. I don't even know why I pulled that up. But it is funny to see him crash and burn. I mean, his approval rating is dookie. He's on the same train as Trump. And actually, I try to check Daily Wire subscriber count on YouTube, and I got a 404 error from the page that tracks that stuff. Can you believe it? Let's see. Let's see if it'll show us. I forget the website. What's the website that shows you the subscription levels? What is it? I don't know, but I know they're losing tons of popularity. I saw it the other day, however, I can't find it now. But yeah. And this is the thing. Who watches him anymore? He coddles his audience with just pure lies. It's absolutely insane. But let's see. Trump had a few things to say. We'll run through these and then we'll likely wrap things up. But let's run through some of these statements from Donald Trump. And then I did want to go over the Tucker Carlson interview that he had like 2 or 3 days ago, but we definitely don't have time. So we'll just react to these Trump clips. Look at this. This is crazy.
Every record. And now we're going to take a hit because we have to make a journey down to Iran to take the nuclear weapon. They would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks. Remember, we sent that beautiful B-2 bomber in, and we blew up their.
Listen to what he says here.
Nuclear potential. It was obliterated.
If we obliterated their nuclear potential, why did we start a war for the nukes a year later? Like, what are we talking about? Obviously, the kids are going to buy it. Why is he saying this? What's happening here? Does anybody know what this was? What are these kids doing here?
Those that are not aware, and to a point where it would take them weeks to dig down, and we wouldn't let them dig down. We have our eyes on it all the time. But it was a very important thing. So we would have had an Iran with a nuclear weapon, and maybe we wouldn't all be here right now. I can tell you the Middle East would have been gone, Israel would have been gone, and they would have trained their sights on Europe first and then us, because they're sick people. These are sick people. And we're not going to let lunatics have a nuclear weapon. The power of a nuclear weapon is something I don't even want to talk about. But it's not going to happen. And we have beaten.
It's just crazy. Saying that in front of kids. So yeah, okay. Let me see. Am I going to hop on Myron here? I don't think so. I think I've been on for 2 hours now, so I don't want to run it too long. I am trying. Someone said trying to create mini neocons. Yeah, those kids are probably like, what is he talking about? That's just so Trump-esque. A bunch of kids next to him in the White House, and he's like, "Did you know Iran's gonna make a nuclear weapon? But yours truly, Mr. Trump. Stop them. I stopped them. I did it good." Anyways, so that's really the long and short of everything. Biggest takeaways from all the developments the last few days: Operation Freedom was a failure. NBC and Ryan Grimm have now reported that the Saudi Arabia and Kuwait have expressed that they did not want the United States to operate from their countries during Operation Freedom, which is why they had to pause it. And so maybe this administration is finding another way of administering the campaign without utilizing the the Gulf bases. And then in regards to the entire situation with the Strait of Hormuz, continuously blockaded, no real developments there. Doesn't look like we'll actually reach a peace plan anytime soon. Israel just bombed the shit out of southern Beirut, or really a suburb south of Beirut, that being Rabedi. And so we'll see what happens as time progresses. They killed a high-ranking military official. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully, there's going to be some sort of concession from the United States on Iran's 14-point proposal. Maybe we reformat it, send it back to them. That's what I'm hopeful of. But, things aren't looking so good as we sit right now. So, let's see. Sagno Sprite says, "Sorry if I missed it, but what are your thoughts on the shooting at the Correspondents' Dinner?" There was also another shooting outside the White House the other day. Things are getting fishy, man. I mean, with this ballroom and everything, it really starts to make things look very suspect. You gotta admit, let's put on our tinfoil hats for a moment here. And I'm honestly of the opinion that it wasn't an inside job, but I will say, Donald Trump wants to build a ballroom, judge halts it, somebody takes a crack at his life, every single magatard on X in unison says, we need a ballroom built. Some guy outside of the White House, some shooting happens. Again, we need a ballroom built. And so was it that crazy to say these attempts on his life are pre-planned inside jobs or operations so he can further cement his reasoning for a ballroom? That's not crazy to say. So it is getting weird. It is getting weird. But that's what he wants. He wants the, $400 million, $500 million ballroom. He wants that built before he exits the White House, and he wants to make sure it happens before 2028. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, don't believe the nuclear lies, as I've exposed for the last 2 hours. And I've been doing it onwards and continuously for the last, I'm going to continue to do it onwards. Sorry, I've been doing it continuously for the last month. But a lot of new people are jumping on and supporting the show, so I want to make sure I'm filling all gaps where needed. But yeah, sorry, I missed a chat. Mabusna, all right, Mabus, I'm just going to read that. Criticizing the rule is permissible in Islam. Don't listen to the Wahhabis. Yeah, I know. Look, no, we're not going to attack Salafiyya, okay? There's some semblance of truth there. Like, you shouldn't revolt and protest and stuff. That's true, but I'm going to condemn the UAE. That's beyond the pale. But all right, yeah, that's it for me, guys. Love all of you. Appreciate the love. Head over to my brother on Kick. I'm going to drop his link. I'll be on tomorrow, and we'll go over the Lebanon situation maybe in a little bit more depth. I kind of want to react to the whole situation with Candace Owens and Daily Wire. I thought that was really funny. And we can go over some other things as well. There's not too much in the news, but some media stuff that I think would be cute to react to. I pinned the message here. So go check out his stream. Love all of you guys. Subscribe if you have not already. If you missed anything in the stream, just go back. I covered a lot of the good developments from Sunday onwards, as Sunday was my last stream. And yeah, that's really it. Have a great night, everybody.